Hello everyone, welcome to our first lecture video for Art 100. For our first two lectures, I have broken them up into two parts. So here is part 1 of Lecture 1, Principles of Design, which covers line and color. Feel free to pause this video as needed to take notes on important terminology, definitions, and examples. We will begin our study of design elements by looking at line. Here are some of the things that lines do in works of art: connect 2 points, define boundaries, define shapes, direct the viewer's gaze, and convey a sense of movement or dynamic energy. Let's take a closer look at how lines are used to direct our gaze, regulate the experience of viewing an image, and control the arrangements of elements within a visual space. The artist Barbara Hepworth used drawings to help define visually what she was feeling or experiencing physically. Her artworks are manifestations of her own reactions to herself in many ways. But in order to communicate shape and form to an audience, she needs lines to help define these aspects in a clear way. What we see is a preparatory drawing for a larger sculpture, and the measured actual lines reflect the different size and dimensions of the piece as she imagines it. These lines help to regulate her experience and interpret her meaning for others by separating the visual space into logical, rhythmic segments that can then be examined at length or translated into different forms and media. In addition to controlling the visual work, lines also can show the opposite of regulation and control, showing impulse and passion. Let's take a quick look at a work that uses lines to display a sense of unchained energy and fervor. Here we have an ink drawing by André Masson, who believed that art could help unleash underlying impulses and emotions. We see his lines reflecting a kind of frantic energy, and, as a result, our eyes dart from line to line, up the curves and over the straight hash marks, creating a haphazard viewing experience that stresses the emotions he must have been feeling at the time he created this piece. Supposedly, Masson would force himself to endure days without food or sleep, bringing forth a more primal form of desperate energy and creativity to his work in these states of delirium. The lines here don't reflect order and planning, but instead impulse and spontaneity. Now that we can see different things that lines can do, we need to clarify what kind of lines we are looking at and what they are called. Implied line is a line that isn't actually a continuous mark, but rather a line that is suggested by the sequential arrangement of different elements within the visual space. For example, on the left side, we have different versions of what actual lines look like, those that are continuous marks between a beginning and an end. But on the right side, we have different versions of what implied lines look like, which are lines that we can discern even without a continuous mark. Notice the diagonal lines created in the top 2 examples on the right, or the sloping and curving lines created by the middle 2 examples as well. Implied lines can help focus the viewer's attention to a particular part of a visual work, or they can also help direct our eyes from one visual element to another, guiding the viewing experience and thus the interpretation of the intended messages. These types of implied lines are called directional lines. Here we have the large-scale, iconic painting by Francisco de Goya, entitled The 3rd of May, 1808, painted in 1814. This scene depicts the execution of Spanish citizens at the hands of French soldiers for rising up against the French invasion and occupation of Madrid, the capital of Spain, in 1808. Goya, who had been the official painter for the royal family leading up to this time, chose to depict this specific moment to dramatize the horrors of the violence that resulted from the invasion and subsequent uprising. Consider how the lines in this painting help direct our gaze and therefore our attention. The hill on the left side of the scene starts our gaze above the people and takes us downward toward the city of Madrid in the background, helping us realize where we are geographically outside the city. Then the group of soldiers at the right creates a subtle downward sloping line that helps focus our attention on the multitude of faceless gunmen, and thus emphasize the brutality of the moment. Then our eyes travel left, following the shadows on the ground to take in the dead bodies in the foreground, following the lines they create back up towards the center of the painting. As our eyes move across the painting, the message is reinforced. We are outside the city walls, outside the world of civil engagement, witnessing a horrific moment of violence as soldiers summarily execute the unarmed Spaniards. The last type of line we are going to discuss here today is communicative line. This is a type of line that communicates certain qualities in subtle, often subconscious ways to viewers. Although the uses and effects of lines can vary widely in art, here are some basic general observations about what types of lines communicate certain qualities or provoke certain responses in viewers. Vertical lines tend to communicate strength, energy, and permanence. Horizontal lines tend to suggest tranquility and calm. And diagonal lines tend to show action, motion, and transformation. Here are some examples of the ways in which vertical lines on the left, horizontal lines in the center, and diagonal lines on the right can be expressed in different types of imagery, from buildings to landscapes to people in motion. We are switching gears now to discuss the role and function of color in art. It's important to know the specific terms attributed to color as we analyze artworks going forward. Primary colors are those that cannot be made from any others. We have 3 primary colors: red, yellow, and blue. Secondary colors are those that are created by mixing 2 primary colors together. We have 3 secondary colors: orange, created from red and yellow, green, created from yellow and blue, and violet, created from blue and red. Subtractive is a term that refers to taking away a color's essence to make it darker and often duller in appearance. But additive is a term that refers to adding more to a color's essence to make it brighter and often lighter in appearance. Here is a basic color wheel. You'll notice that the colors alternate between primary and secondary colors, and the secondary colors are surrounded by the primary colors that create them. It is important to remember the location of colors on the color wheel, so feel free to refer back to this slide as needed. A color scheme refers to the general types of colors used in a work of art, often based on the relationships between the colors used. Analogous colors do not contrast as strongly with each other, as they share elements of specific colors and seem to be closely related. These analogous colors are located directly next to each other on the color wheel. Complementary colors do strongly contrast each other, often exaggerating the effects of the individual colors by placing them in direct contact with their complement. These complementary colors are located on opposite ends of the color wheel. This graphic allows us to see these color schemes through different color combinations. On the left side, we have analogous colors of primary and secondary color combinations. On the right side, we have the combinations of complementary colors, with one color acting as the foreground, the circles, and the other acting as the background. Since complementary colors can intensify each other through the strong contrast, sometimes they are referred to as vibrating boundaries, which add richness and vibrancy to the color combinations. Finally, in the center, we have a variety of primary, secondary, and tertiary colors, giving us the impression that there are virtually endless color combinations through the mixing of pigments. As the color saturation and intensity changes, and as color schemes are applied systematically, they are given specific temperature categories as well. Typically, warmer colors are those with red, orange, and yellow color schemes. They tend to give viewers a more energetic and possibly anxious or uncomfortable viewing experience. And typically, cooler colors are those with green, blue, and violet color schemes. They tend to give viewers a more tranquil and possibly somber or quiet viewing experience. Working within a specific color scheme, which includes a variety of primary and secondary color combinations, is one way that artists can use color to express specific emotions or to provoke specific emotional responses and reactions from the viewer. Color temperature plays an important role here, since warm color schemes can provoke sensations of discomfort or energy, and cool color schemes can provoke sensations of sadness or tranquility. The range of expressive qualities depends on the choices of the artist and the content of the work. Take, for example, Vincent van Gogh's painting Night Café from 1888. Although a variety of colors are present, Van Gogh generally composed an image of warmer color temperatures. The bright yellows against the reddish walls in the background create tension and confrontation, perhaps putting the viewer on alert in a strange way, considering the supposedly unassuming subject matter of people in a cafe's space. Only 1 year later, Van Gogh painted Starry Night, which includes a cooler color temperature scheme. Here, the nighttime landscape creates a more quiet, serene space, as if the world below us were asleep and dreaming as we gaze at the marvelous swirling patterns in the night sky, dotted with stars and a crescent moon. This concludes Part 1 on Line and Color of Lecture 1, Principles of Design. Feel free to return to any portion of this lecture video as needed for your reference.